The fluorescent tubes in the ceiling stuttered as Rachel Morrison wiped down the counter for what felt like the 100th time that night. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers, and a dull pressure had begun to throb at the base of her skull. Outside the wide front windows, rain hammered the nearly empty parking lot, streams of water racing toward the storm drains. It was nearly 11. She still had to grab her daughter from the neighbor's apartment before midnight. "Table 4 needs a refill," Marcus, the night cook, called from the pass-through window. Rachel grabbed the coffee pot and crossed to the corner booth where an elderly couple shared a slice of apple pie. As she poured, she caught her reflection in the glass. 28, but she could have passed for 35. Her blonde hair was yanked into a tired ponytail. The dark circles beneath her green eyes laughed at whatever concealer she'd tried that morning. 3 years since Danny had walked out. 6 months pregnant, unpaid bills on the table, their savings gone, her heart in pieces. She'd learned fast that single motherhood wasn't a sprint. It was a marathon with no finish line. By day she was a medical records clerk at the hospital. At night she waited tables at Joe's diner. Sleep was a luxury, a social life a joke. Her 5-year-old daughter Mia was everything. But the bone-deep exhaustion never let her forget how thinly she was stretched. The bell over the door chimed. Rachel looked up as a man stepped in, rain dripping from his dark jacket. He was tall, early 30s, with dark brown hair that curled slightly at the ends and striking blue eyes that seemed to take everything in. The way he moved, easy, self-contained, was confident without being showy, observant without being nosy. "Sit anywhere you'd like," Rachel called, forcing a smile through her fatigue. He nodded and slid into a booth near the window, settling into the cracked vinyl like he belonged in places like this. Rachel filled a glass of water, grabbed a menu and walked over. "Rough night?" he asked, voice warm and edged with genuine concern as he took in her tired face. "Is it that obvious?" she said with a small self-mocking laugh. "What can I get you?" "Just coffee and whatever pie you've got left." "I'm not picky." He smiled and something fluttered unexpectedly in her chest. She shoved the feeling away. Complications, especially romantic ones, were luxuries she could not afford. "Apple or cherry?" "Surprise-me." In the weeks that followed, the man who introduced himself as James Cooper became part of the diner's late-night landscape. He usually came in around 10:30, always chose the same booth, always ordered coffee and pie. Rachel learned he worked at an auto repair shop across town, often staying late to finish jobs. His hands told the story. Calloused, faintly stained with grease that no amount of soap fully erased. "My car died last month," Rachel mentioned one night as she topped off his mug. "Transmission just gave out. I've been riding the bus since. Adds an extra hour to everything." James looked up, concern on his face. "What kind of car?" 2008 Honda Civic. "It's been limping along for years. The shop I went to quoted $3,000. Which I definitely don't have." "Bring it by Miller's Auto Shop on 5th, James said, pulling a business card from his pocket and scribbling on the back. "Ask for me. I'll take a look. See what I can do." Rachel hesitated. Experience had taught her to be careful with men offering help. Strings always seemed to be attached. But something about James's steady gaze and quiet manner cut through her defenses. "Okay," she said finally. "I'll see if I can get it towed." 2 days later, her neighbor's cousin hauled the Honda to Miller's. The shop was bigger than she'd expected, with multiple service bays and mechanics ducking in and out under hoods. James met her at the entrance in navy coveralls with his name stitched on the chest. He managed to look even better covered in grease and holding a wrench than he did at the diner. "Pop the hood," he said. He spent 20 minutes examining the engine, making occasional notes on a small pad. At last he straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. "Your transmission's shot, that part's true. But I can rebuild it instead of replacing it. I'll do it after hours on my own time. Parts will be about $400. I won't charge labor." Tears pricked Rachel's eyes before she could stop them. "James, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm offering." His blue eyes held hers. "Everybody needs a hand sometimes, Rachel. Let me help." She agreed. Over the next 2 weeks, James worked on her car in the evenings. Rachel started bringing him dinner from the diner. Meatloaf, mashed potatoes, whatever was left from her shift. They ate together in the cramped break room, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up in foster care, bouncing between homes until he aged out at 18, how he'd worked multiple jobs while going to technical school, finally landing at Miller's. "What about you?" he asked one night, his eyes soft in the dim fluorescent light. "How'd you end up juggling 2 jobs and raising a daughter on your own?" She told him about Danny, the promises that dissolved into lies, coming home from a long shift to find half their belongings gone and their bank account emptied, being 7 months pregnant, and staring at an eviction notice, terrified. Strangers who'd stepped in when she had nothing left. She hadn't spoken that openly to anyone since Danny left. Yet with James, the words came easier than she expected. "You're stronger than you think," he said quietly when she finished. "Mia's lucky to have you." On Saturday, James finished the car. Rachel brought Mia with her to pick it up. She watched her daughter's eyes go wide when James crouched to her level and nodded toward the stuffed rabbit in her arms. "And who's this?" he asked solemnly. "This is Mr. Hops," Mia said with equal seriousness. "He's very old. Mommy had him when she was little." "Well, Mr. Hops looks very wise," James replied. "I bet he's been on a lot of adventures." As Rachel drove away, the Civic running more smoothly than it had in months, she checked the rearview mirror. James stood in the parking lot watching them go. Mia chattered in her car seat about the nice man who fixed our car. Something shifted in Rachel's chest then, a dangerous, unfamiliar warmth that felt a lot like hope. Over the next month, James slipped further into their lives. He started joining them for Sunday pancakes at the diner during Rachel's break. Mia chattered at him about kindergarten and her best friend Sophie. James listened like every detail was fascinating. He never pushed, never hinted at anything Rachel wasn't ready for. That quiet patience only made her fall harder. One night, as she was closing up, she overheard 2 men in suits at the counter speaking in hushed voices. "I'm telling you it's him," one said. "James Miller. Guy owns half the real estate in this city. What the hell is he doing working at an auto shop in this neighborhood?" Rachel's stomach lurched. Miller's auto shop. James Cooper. She'd never connected the name before. Hands trembling, she finished wiping the tables and locked up, her mind whirling. Couldn't be the same man. Could it? The next morning, Rachel sat at her tiny kitchen table with her old laptop open, Mia eating cereal beside her and watching cartoons. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she typed, "James Miller, billionaire." The results loaded. Her heart dropped. There he was. Article after article. Photos from charity galas. Business profiles. James Alexander Miller, founder and CEO of Miller Properties Group. Estimated net worth, $2.3 billion. The pictures showed him in expensive suits beside politicians and celebrities, cutting ribbons at grand openings. Polished. Powerful. Absolutely him. Those same blue eyes. That familiar, quiet confidence. But framed in a completely different world. Rachel's hand shook as she scrolled. From foster care to fortune. The James Miller story. Real estate mogul expands empire. Billionaire philanthropist pledges millions to youth programs. The man who'd rebuilt her transmission. Who sat in a dingy booth eating day-old pie. Who knelt to discuss a stuffed rabbit with her daughter. One of the wealthiest men in the state. And he'd let her believe he was just a mechanic. "Mommy, are you okay?" Mia's small voice broke through her fog. Rachel looked up at her worried face, milk mustache on her lip. "I'm fine, sweetheart," she lied. "Finish your breakfast. We've got to get you to school." All day at the hospital, rage and humiliation churned in her chest. Had she been some kind of experiment? Did billionaires get bored and play pretend with people like her? She thought about every time she worried about money in front of him. Every time she'd accepted his help because she had no other option. $400 in parts, a rounding error in his world. Had he laughed about her later? By the end of her shift, her hurt had hardened into fury. She drove straight to Miller's auto shop, jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. The garage was busy. Mechanics moved between cars in a practiced rhythm. Rachel spotted James in the far bay, bent over a pickup's engine. "James!" she called, her voice slicing through the whine of tools and revving engines. He looked up, his face lighting with that warm smile that now felt like a slap. Rachel, this is a surprise. Is everything okay with the... Cut the act. She strode toward him. A few mechanics glanced over, sensing trouble. I know who you are, she said, voice shaking. James Miller. Not James Cooper. Miller Properties Group. $2.3 billion. His smile vanished, replaced by regret and something like resignation. He set down his wrench, wiped his hands slowly on a rag. Can we talk somewhere private? Why? So you can spin more lies. Her voice cracked. I trusted you. I let you into my daughter's life. Was this all entertainment? Slumming it with the poor? See how the other half lives. Rachel, please. He took a step toward her. She backed away. Explain what? She snapped. That you've been playing dress-up out here while I'm killing myself with 2 jobs? While you watch me panic about bills, knowing you could write a check for more than I'll earn in my life. Tears sprang to her eyes. She hated crying in front of him. Did you tell your rich friends about the desperate single mom who actually believed you were just a mechanic? It's not like that. His voice stayed quiet but firm. This shop, I built it before everything else. It's where I started. I still work here because it's the one place people treat me like a person instead of a wallet. How noble, Rachel said bitterly. Meanwhile, I'm counting quarters for my kids' shoes, and you're watching like it's a documentary. I never meant to hurt you. He dragged a hand through his hair, looking more exposed than she'd ever seen him. The night I walked into that diner, you had no idea who I was. You treated me like a regular guy. Do you know how rare that is? How exhausting it is never knowing if people like you or your money. Poor you, she shot back. Must be hell being a billionaire. You want to know why I didn't tell you? His voice rose, frustration seeping in. Because I knew this would happen. I knew the second you found out everything would change. And I was right, wasn't I? Look at us. She shook her head, tears spilling. You should have told me. You should have given me the choice. Would you have let me fix your car if you'd known? The question hung heavy between them. Rachel opened her mouth to say yes, but the word died on her tongue. Because he was right. If she'd known, she would have refused out of pride, seen it as charity, pity. That's what I thought, James said softly. Rachel, I care about you. About Mia. These last months have been the happiest I've had in years because I got to be just James. Not James Miller, CEO. Not the guy everyone wants something from. Just James who fixes cars and eats pie at a diner. But that's not who you are, she whispered. Not really. He gestured around the garage. I'm here 4 days a week. I still do the work. This place, these people. They're as real as anything else in my life. More real than most. Rachel scrubbed at her face with the back of her hand. I need time. I need space. She turned and walked out before he could answer, her vision blurring. Behind her, someone said something to James. His low reply was lost under the roar in her ears. The next 2 weeks were agony. James stopped coming to the diner. Rachel told herself the empty booth was a relief, but every time the bell over the door rang, her heart lurched and fell when it wasn't him. Mia kept asking about him. When is James coming over? Can we see James? Does James still like us? Each question cut deeper. Rachel tried to focus on work, on Mia. But he was everywhere. In the smooth purr of her car's engine. In the new coffee maker he'd quietly replaced when she mentioned the old one sputtered. In the children's storybook he'd found at a garage sale, which she now suspected had come from a pricey shop. Finally, her neighbor Patricia cornered her. Patricia was in her 60s and watched Mia after school sometimes. You're miserable, honey, Patricia said bluntly one evening. And that little girl keeps asking about a man named James. Want to talk? Over cups of tea at Patricia's mismatched kitchen table, Rachel poured out the whole story. Patricia listened without interrupting, her lined face thoughtful. When Rachel finished, Patricia sat silent for a moment. Let me ask you something, she said at last. Before you knew about the money, were you happy? Yes. The admission came out on a sigh. Happier than I'd been in years. And do you think he was happy? Rachel thought of James's easy laughter, the way his shoulders loosened around them, the delight in his eyes when Mia showed him her drawings. Yes. Then what's the real problem? That he has money, or that he didn't tell you? He lied to me. Did he? Patricia raised an eyebrow. Or did he just not volunteer information? Did you ever ask him how much money he has? Rachel frowned. Of course not. That would be rude. Exactly. So he didn't lie. He let you assume. Patricia patted her hand. Honey, I've been around long enough to know good men are rare. Men who'll rebuild a transmission, play with a little girl, and look at a worn-out waitress like she hung the moon? Rarer still. Maybe ask yourself why the money matters so much. That night, after putting Mia to bed, Rachel lay awake staring at the ceiling. Patricia's questions echoed in her mind. Why did the money matter? Was it really about the secret? Or something else? She thought of Danny, who'd promised her everything and left her with nothing. Her father, gone when she was 10, leaving her mother to raise 3 kids alone. Every man who had walked away. Every promise turned to dust. Then she thought of James. Not James Miller, billionaire, but James who ate leftover meatloaf in a dingy break room. Who listened without judgment. Who knelt on a grease-stained floor to talk to a little girl about her stuffed rabbit. The money didn't erase those moments. But it did change the balance between them. And that terrified her. How could she ever feel like his equal? What could she possibly offer a man who had everything money could buy? She was restocking napkin dispensers during the lunch rush when raised voices near the entrance drew her attention. A woman in a cream-colored suit stood at the hostess stand, posture stiff with annoyance. She was mid-40s, with perfectly styled auburn hair and jewelry that definitely wasn't department store costume. I'm looking for Rachel Morrison, the woman said crisply. I was told she works here. Rachel's stomach tightened. She set down the napkins and approached. I'm Rachel. Can I help you? The woman's cool gray gaze swept over Rachel's stained apron and flyaway hair. I'm Victoria Hartley, James Miller's business partner and advisor. We need to talk. They took a corner booth. Victoria ordered nothing, folding her hands like she owned the place. Rachel's fingers trembled slightly around her coffee mug. I'll be direct, Victoria began. I've known James for 15 years. I was there when he bought his first building. I've watched him build his empire. He's brilliant, driven, and one of the most generous men I know. He's also been used more times than I care to count. I'm not trying to take advantage of him, Rachel said, bristling. Perhaps not consciously. Victoria's tone softened by a hair. But James is worth billions, Ms. Morrison. You're a single mother working 2 jobs. The optics alone are difficult. There are people who will call you a gold digger, who will question your motives. Heat rushed to Rachel's cheeks. I didn't even know who he was until 2 weeks ago. I know. That's actually what frightens me most. Victoria leaned forward. James comes here to escape his real life. He plays mechanic, pretends he's a regular guy. It isn't sustainable. He has responsibilities. Boards. Investors. Developments in 6 states. He can't keep living this double life. I never asked him to, Rachel said tightly. No, Victoria conceded. But your presence encourages it. He's skipped 3 board meetings. He's turned down opportunities, ducked social obligations, all to spend more time in this world. Her expression was almost sympathetic. I'm not saying you're a bad person. I'm saying sometimes good people are wrong for each other. You're from different worlds. Trying to bridge that gap will hurt both of you, and your daughter in the long run. After Victoria left, Rachel moved through the rest of her shift on autopilot. Words looped in her head. Different worlds. Gold digger. Unsustainable. Maybe Victoria was right. Maybe Rachel was selfish, clinging to something that had no chance. That evening, walking the 3 blocks home after picking Mia up from Patricia's, Rachel barely heard her daughter's stream of chatter. Mommy, why are you sad? Mia finally asked, stopping in the middle of the sidewalk. Rachel knelt to meet her eyes. I'm just tired, baby. Is it because of James? Mia's brown eyes, so much like Rachel's own, were painfully perceptive. I miss him. He was nice. He made you smile. Rachel pulled her close, swallowing hard. Sometimes, sweetheart, people come into our lives for a little while, and then they have to go. But why? Because Sometimes that's just how it works. The next afternoon, Rachel's phone rang during her hospital shift. Unknown number. Something in her gut made her answer. Hello. Rachel, it's James. His voice was taut. I need your help. It's Mia. The world narrowed. What about Mia? What happened? She's okay. She's safe, he rushed to say. But she ran away from Patricia's. She showed up at the shop about 20 minutes ago. She won't tell me why. Patricia's frantic. Can you come? Rachel abandoned her post with barely a word to her supervisor, who reluctantly let her go. The drive to the shop felt endless. When she burst into the break room, Mia sat at the small table, eyes red and swollen. James sat cross-legged on the floor beside her, his face streaked with tracks through the grease smudges. Mia. Rachel dropped to her knees and pulled her daughter into her arms. Baby, what were you thinking? You can't just leave without telling anyone. You scared me half to death. I wanted to see James, Mia sobbed into her shoulder. You said people have to go away sometimes. I didn't want him to go away. I wanted to ask him to stay. Rachel's heart splintered. She looked up at James over Mia's head and saw the same ache in his eyes. Sweetheart, it's more complicated than, she started. No, it's not. James cut in quietly, standing. Rachel, can we talk? Really talk this time. Patricia arrived minutes later, breathless and shaken. She took Mia for ice cream, promising a serious conversation later. That left Rachel and James alone in the small room, the air thick with everything they hadn't said. Victoria came to see me, James said. Told me she'd talk to you. She was right, Rachel answered dully. We're from different worlds. That's bullshit. The curse startled her. She'd never heard him swear. I'm sorry, he added. But it is. You know what my world is, Rachel? It's empty. It's people who see dollar signs, not a person. Fake smiles. Calculated conversations. Never knowing who actually cares. He stepped closer, voice low and intense. When I met you, you didn't see James Miller, billionaire. You saw some guy having a rough night and offered coffee and pie. You told me about your life. Your struggles. Your kid. You were real. Every minute with you has been real. I can't give you what someone from your world could, Rachel said, tears stinging again. I don't know your circles. I don't belong at galas with people in designer gowns. I'm a waitress with a 5-year-old and more bills than money. Do you think I care about any of that? He took her hands gently. I've dated models, socialites, women with trust funds. They were beautiful. Successful. I was miserable. They never looked at me the way you do. They never made me laugh like you do. They never made me want to be better. She swallowed. Your business partner thinks I'm a gold digger. Victoria is overprotective. And wrong about you. His grip tightened as if he could anchor her there. I know she's wrong because I've watched you. Working 2 jobs to take care of Mia. Tipping the busboy your entire tip because his mother was sick. Talking about your dreams, not for mansions or cars or jewelry, but for stability, security. Being able to take Mia to the zoo without worrying about the ticket price. Rachel gave a watery laugh. Those are pretty small dreams for a billionaire's girlfriend. You're not my girlfriend, James said, and her heart sank before he continued. Not yet. But I want you to be. He took a breath. I want to take you on real dates. I want to meet Mia's teachers, help with her homework. I want to fall asleep next to you and wake up and be relieved you're still there. And yeah, I want to help you, not out of pity but because when people care about each other, they help. That's what a partnership is. James, she whispered. I'm not asking you to quit your jobs or move into my penthouse, he went on. I'm asking you to let me be part of your life as I am. Not the billionaire. Not the CEO. Just me. The guy who likes fixing cars, eating diner pie, and listening to Mia talk about kindergarten. What about your real life? She asked. The board meetings. The properties. All of it. That's my work, he said simply. You and Mia, you're my life. If I have to choose, I choose you. Every time. He cupped her face. But I'm hoping I don't have to choose. I'm hoping we can figure out how to make both worlds work. Rachel closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. Every practical instinct screamed that this was dangerous.
Impossible.
But her heart's stubborn, hopeful thing that it was beat louder. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. What if Victoria's right? What if people think I'm just after your money? Then they don't know you, James said firmly. And their opinions don't matter. Only 3 opinions matter. Yours, mine, and Mia's. She opened her eyes. His expression held such tenderness it stole her breath. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to date a billionaire. Good thing you're not, he said, a small smile tugging at his mouth. You're dating James, the mechanic who can't keep his work shirts clean and always orders the same pie. Despite herself, she laughed. You're impossible. Is that a yes? She thought of Mia's tears, of the hollowness of the last 2 weeks, of how right it had felt when he was around. She heard Patricia's voice. Before you knew about the money, were you happy? Yes, she said finally. But we're taking this slow. And you're going to your board meetings. Deal. He pulled her into his arms, and for the first time in weeks the tightness in her chest began to ease. There's something else I should tell you, he said after a moment. Her nerves sparked. What? The auto shop. Miller's. It's not just where I work. He hesitated. I own it. I've owned it 12 years. It was my first business before everything else took off. And I'm planning to franchise it, help mechanics from rough backgrounds own their own shops. I've been working on the plan for months. Rachel stared. So you really are a mechanic? I really am a mechanic, James said. The real estate came later, almost by accident. I bought a building for the shop. Then another. And another. But this? He glanced toward the garage. This has always been my foundation. You're full of surprises, James Miller. Is that a bad thing? She rose on her toes and kissed him softly. Ask me again in a few months. 6 months later, Rachel stood in front of her bathroom mirror smoothing the skirt of her dress for the 10th time. Deep emerald green, simple but elegant, and more expensive than anything she'd ever owned. James had insisted on taking her shopping. She'd protested. He'd countered that she needed something special for tonight. It was his foundation's youth program fundraiser, and she was being honored as volunteer coordinator. That had been his compromise. Rachel had refused to quit either job outright, despite his gentle reminders that she no longer had to grind herself into dust. Instead, they'd found middle ground. She cut her diner shifts to weekends only and began volunteering with his foundation, helping design programs for single parents. Her lived experience turned out to be a far more valuable credential than any degree. Mommy, you look like a princess, Mia breathed from the doorway, twirling in her own cloud of pink tulle. Patricia was taking her to a movie while Rachel and James attended the gala. You look pretty beautiful yourself, Rachel said, carefully kneeling to hug her. Be good for Miss Patricia, okay? I will. Tell James the first said hi. Mia kissed her cheek, leaving a smear of strawberry lip gloss that Rachel wiped away with a smile. The gala was at the Grand Metropole Hotel, all crystal chandeliers and polished marble. Women floated by in gowns that cost more than Rachel's car. She felt James's hand warm and steady at the small of her back as they entered. Over the past months, she'd learned how to navigate these events, though she doubted she'd ever feel truly at home in them. You're doing great, James murmured as they moved through the crowd. Remember, half these people are more nervous than you. Hard to believe when they're wearing diamonds the size of my thumb, she muttered. James chuckled. Mrs. Peyton over there? Terrified of small talk. Judge Morrison has awful social anxiety. Mr. Chun would rather be anywhere else. Rachel had learned he had a talent for seeing past people's masks, maybe because he wore one so often. In public, he was James Miller, billionaire philanthropist, smiling and shaking hands with practiced ease. In private, with her and Mia, he was just James, the man who still clocked in at the auto shop 4 mornings a week, who made horrible pancakes but kept trying, who did voices for every character when he read bedtime stories. Victoria Hartley approached, her expression warmer than the first time they'd met. Over the months, Rachel had slowly won her over by consistently failing to show any interest in James's money. Victoria had eventually offered a stiff apology, admitting she'd misjudged Rachel. The youth program presentation is in 20 minutes, Victoria said. You ready? Rachel's stomach dipped. As ready as I'll ever be. She was scheduled to speak about the mentorship program she'd helped design, pairing single parents with career counselors and providing childcare assistance. It was born from her own life. She'd poured herself into it. When she stepped on stage, the sea of glittering dresses and bow ties momentarily overwhelmed her. Then she found James in the crowd, his eyes fixed on her, pride and encouragement written plainly across his face. Good evening, she began, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. 6 months ago, I was working 2 jobs, barely sleeping, and wondering how I'd afford new shoes for my daughter. One unexpected expense away from disaster. I felt completely alone. She spoke about the isolation of single parenthood, the fear of falling behind and never catching up, the barriers that trapped families in place, lack of childcare and flexible work, the cost of training and education. Then she outlined their program and how it tackled each of those challenges. When she was done, the applause crashed over her like a wave. Back at their table, her hands were still shaking. You were incredible, James whispered, squeezing her fingers. I'm so proud of you. Later, slow dancing under soft lights, Rachel rested her head on his chest. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For being patient with me. For understanding why I needed to do this my way. Rachel, you're one of the strongest people I know, he said, pulling back enough to meet her eyes. You didn't need rescuing. You just needed support. There's a difference. I love you, she said. The word still felt new every time. I love you too. He kissed her forehead. Actually, there's something important I want to talk to you about. Her heart sped up. That sounds ominous. Not ominous. Just big. He led her to a quiet balcony overlooking the city, lights glittering below. I've been thinking about franchising the auto shop, he said. Like I mentioned before. I remember. How's it going? Good. Really good. The first franchise opens in 3 months. He hesitated, uncharacteristically nervous. I want to offer you a job. Not because of us, but because you're good at this. You understand people. You understand struggle. You know how to build programs that actually help. Rachel blinked. James, I'm not qualified. You're more qualified than someone with an MBA who's never worried about feeding their kid, he said. I'm not asking you to become a mechanic. I want you to develop community outreach programs for each franchise. Fair salary, benefits, flexible hours for Mia. What do you think? Her thoughts raced. It would mean leaving both jobs, stepping fully into his world. But it would also mean using her experience to help people like her. A network she desperately needed years ago. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. 2 weeks later, Rachel gave notice at the hospital and the diner. Joe hugged her and told her she'd always have a job if she wanted one. Her hospital coworkers threw a small party with store-bought cake and plastic cups of soda, genuinely happy for her. Her first day at Miller Properties Group terrified her. She had an office, small but real, and 3 people reporting to her. But James had been right. Her perspective mattered. Within months, she'd helped shape programs across his properties. Job training partnerships, on-site childcare, support services that actually fit people's lives. 9 months after that first talk on the gala balcony, Rachel woke on a Saturday to the smell of something burning. James, of course. He was already in her tiny kitchen, murdering another batch of pancakes. They still kept separate apartments, taking things slowly for Mia's sake, but he spent most weekends at her place now. Mommy, James, look what I drew. Mia burst in, waving a piece of paper. It showed 3 stick figures holding hands, one tall, one medium, one small. Above them she'd carefully written, "My family." Rachel's eyes filled. James set down the spatula and knelt beside her. That's beautiful, kiddo. Can I keep it? It's for both of you, Mia said seriously. Because you're both my family now. After breakfast, James took Mia to the park, giving Rachel a rare stretch of quiet. She used it to call her mother, with whom she'd been slowly rebuilding a relationship over the past year. He sounds wonderful, honey, her mother said. When do I get to meet him? Soon, Rachel promised. Maybe next month. After they hung up, Rachel wandered through her apartment. It was still small and modest but different now. Fuller. Mia's drawings covered the fridge. One of James's jackets hung on the coat hook by the door. A framed photo from the gala sat on the shelf, catching her mid-laugh while James looked at her like she was the only person in the room. Her phone buzzed. Mia wants ice cream. Can we bring you some? Rachel smiled and texted back. Always. That evening, after Mia was asleep, Rachel and James sat on her tiny balcony, watching the sky bleed from orange to pink to deep blue. James had been unusually quiet. What's on your mind? She asked, threading her fingers through his. I've been thinking about the future, he said slowly. About what I want my life to look like. Rachel's heart picked up. And I want it to look like this. You, Mia. He paused, searching for the right words. Maybe a house with a yard so Mia can run around. Maybe more kids someday if you want that. Sunday pancakes. Bedtime stories. Helping with homework. He turned to face her fully. I want to build a life with you, Rachel. A real one. Not separate apartments. Not half in, half out. All in. James, I'm not proposing, he added quickly. Not yet. I know you want to take things slow and I respect that. I just want you to know where my head is. Where my heart is. You and Mia, you're my home. Everything else is details. Tears slipped down Rachel's cheeks, but this time they were purely happy. I want that too, she whispered. I'm still scared. But I'm more excited than scared. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. He pulled her close, and they sat quietly as the last light faded. 3 months later, Rachel stood in the backyard of a modest but beautiful house in a good school district, watching Mia chase butterflies through the grass. The lawn wasn't perfectly manicured. Some of the flower beds still needed work. To Rachel it was perfect. James slipped his arms around her waist from behind. Happy? He asked softly. She thought of the broken-down Civic that had brought her to his shop. The late-night conversations over leftover meatloaf. The anger, the fear, the hard-won trust. The woman she'd been a year ago. Exhausted, afraid, alone. The woman she was now, confident, purposeful, loved. Incredibly, she said, turning to kiss him. Thank you. For being patient. For letting me find my way here. Thank you for taking a chance on a mechanic in a diner, he said with a crooked smile. Best decision you ever didn't know you were making. From inside the house, Mia's voice floated out. Mommy, James, come see what I found. Hand in hand, they walked toward the back door. Their door now. It wasn't the mansion James could have afforded, but it was theirs. Fit. As Rachel stepped into the house, she realized this was what happiness looked like. Not perfection. Not wealth. Just love, partnership, and the daily work of building something real together. The mechanic and the single mom had found their happy ending, not because he rescued her or she transformed him, but because, day after day, through doubt and fear and uncertainty, they kept choosing each other. And that choice, Rachel knew, was worth more than all the money in the world.